Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to give a few minutes for people to pop in. Shalice, your background is amazing. I love it. Is it an artwork that you made? Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. So bright and colorful. All right. Well, as people trickle in, we're going to start by introducing ourselves. In the original page for this workshop, we said it was going to be an hour, but you might have noticed in my email confirmation today and yesterday, we said an hour and a half because we realized that an hour is just not a good enough time for us to really fully explore everything we want to talk about today. But if you have to leave it in 1 hour, we 100% understand. We are recording this and we will send the recording out to you as well. But we really wanted to make sure, it's creativity takes space and we just needed to have that space for ourselves. So my name is Cindy Ingram. If you don't know me, I am the author of a book that Heather published called Art is About Being Whole, a memoir. And I've worked for the last 10 years with art teachers in a business called Art Class Curator. And I also work with individuals on helping them with their creativity and also helping them connect with themselves through looking at works of art with a program called the Art Connection Circle. And I'm so excited to be with Heather Doyle Fraser here, who we met worked together, published my book, realized we had a whole lot in common, and decided to work together. So we're really excited to be here. And let Heather introduce herself.
Hello, I am Heather Doyle Fraser. As Cindy said, I see a couple of faces that I didn't expect, so I'm really excited. I am the publisher, writer, and coach at Compassionate Mind Collaborative. That is my business, and I help people bring their books from basic idea to publish or anywhere in between with my team. And my mission is to bring more compassion to the world through books. And also helping writers and other creatives bring their message to the page or however it's meant to be by using compassionate practices. And so I think that's at the cornerstone of every creative practice is compassion. And that's what I want to help people do. And as Cindy said, we worked together on her book and just realized that after that was done, it could not be done. That couldn't be the end because we had so much fun working together and realized we had so much in common. And every single conversation we had focused on creativity and other things related, and we just couldn't stop. So we didn't. And here we are right now.
Yeah. And we found really that, my focus is art and Heather's focus is writing, but that the processes are the same, and whatever you're creating, no matter it's art or dance or music or whatever it is, that it's still the same creative process and you go through the same struggles and the same everything. So when we're talking about creativity today, we're talking about, the wide, expansive definition of creativity.
Very broad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with those introductions, we're going to get started. It looks like a couple more people have joined. And we're going to begin today I'm just going to give you a brief little outline of how the evening's going to flow. So I'm going to start with a guided breathing practice and a little meditation for you. We're going to go into an activity from there. And then I'm going to turn it over to Cindy, and she's going to do an experience with you. And then I'm going to take it back a little bit and talk a little bit more about compassion and some things like that. And then we're gonna end after that. So So that's the basic trajectory, so everybody knows what's going to be coming. But first, we're going to start, again, I said, with this grounded breathing exercise. This is a very simple breathing exercise called soothing rhythm breathing. It's from Compassionate Mind Training. And you'll see that we're going to start this with breathing, but then we're going to kind of just ease into a guided meditation from there. So I invite you to sit in a comfortable yet both alert and relaxed position. And I invite you to either close your eyes or softly focus on something in front of you. And take a deep inhale. And exhale. Inhaling, hearing that gentle, supportive whisper, mind slowing down. And exhaling, body slowing down. Inhaling, mind slowing down. And exhaling, body slowing down. Although I'm giving you cues for breathing, please breathe at the pace and rhythm that feels good to your body in this moment, trying to extend that exhale just a bit longer than your inhale. Inhaling, mind slowing down, and exhaling, body slowing down. On this next inhale, bring a gentle half smile to your face, a Mona Lisa smile. This is a cue to your body, just like slow breathing, that everything is okay in this moment. And exhale. Inhaling, mind slowing down. And exhaling, body slowing down. Inhaling, mind slowing down. And exhaling, body slowing down. On this next inhale, I want you to imagine that you are coming out of a wooded area into a clearing. And as you come out of the brush and the trees into this bright, inviting clearing, you see a very welcoming tea and coffee shop. As you enter, you feel immediately soothed. You know that in this space, you can feel yourself, fully yourself. Everything here says rest and digest. Comfy couches, chairs, big windows looking out into that wooded area, sunlight streaming in. And as you slowly move through the room, you have a sense that in this place, in this space, you could touch your past, your present, and your future, all created here, all accessible here, especially your creativity. So you begin to explore. Feel safe, surrounded by comfort, and kind of have a feeling of being cradled in your inner wisdom. You notice there's some stairs, and you decide to start going up them. And as you start climbing the stairs, you see framed pictures on the staircase from your creative life. Times when you felt particularly creative are captured here. And then there's also times when things didn't feel particularly creative, when you felt stuck or as if you were just going through the motions of life. You're intrigued by all of these images, some of which you have forgotten, and others you remember very well. In fact, you feel that memory in your body. As you come to the second floor, a presence comes forward, and you instantly recognize them as your perfect nurturer. This presence is wise, calm, fierce, supportive, and always has your best and highest interest at heart. You realize this presence is here to accompany you on this journey and provide support and perspective if you need it. They walk next to you as you continue up the next flight of stairs and seeing more images of how your creativity has shown up in your life. Just let those images flow by you, lingering on some if you want to, or letting them pass. With your perfect nurturer next to you. At the top of the stairs, you notice a door with light emanating from all of its cracks. And you know that something special waits for you here. You make sure your perfect nurturer is next to you, and you enter the door, crossing the threshold. Two of you walk in, and you find there is only one thing in this room. A fluffy yet supportive cloud. You walk together over to the cloud and gently sit down. It immediately supports you with this kind of firm softness, and it feels like the presence of your perfect nurture. as the two of you settle into this cloud, begins to float gently through the memories you observed on the stairs. Perhaps you notice some you didn't before. And through each memory, you feel safe and supported, even if you didn't feel that way when the event occurred. You float through your recent past and back through your adulthood. You flow through your college or school years. Through high school, middle school, and then even elementary school. And it begins to slow down as you become younger and younger. Finally, you arrive at your first memory of creating or being creative. Sit down next to this young version of yourself and join them in their creativity. You ask this young version of yourself, why are you creating? Why are you doing this? When you hear their response, you feel that in your body. Why else are you creating? Anything else? Sink into their response. Oh, that feels so true. That feels so right. And as you make that connection, you allow your body now to feel what this young version of yourself felt. In that moment of creating. You breathe into that feeling, that experience. Place your hand over your heart, making a physical and mental connection, an emotional connection to that moment. Close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, you feel contented. And you realize that you're starting to float back to the tea shop. When you arrive back at the tea shop, you feel refreshed and nurtured. And you know you will bring this experience back with you. you also know that that perfect nurturer is with you always, and that you can carry their presence with you anytime you need it. Take a couple more breaths here. When you're ready, open your eyes. Come back into the room. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about this, but before we do, I want you to jot down some things. I would like you to make a 3 columns on a piece of paper. This is our 3-column compass. And on the first column is why. Yay, thank you, Cindy. Why is creativity important to you? In the second column is what are your values as a creative? And in the third column is the stories you hold around your creativity. Now, I know this is a lot. I want you to start with the why. I want you to start, why is creativity important to you? Why do you create? And after you've finished that column, move on to jot down some notes and what you think your values as a creative are. But don't go there yet. Just start with the why piece. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do the why creativity is important to you. Now, if you've been able to jot down why creativity is important to you, I'd like you to think about what your values as a creative are. These may be the same as other values work that you've done, or they may be a little bit different. Here's a example of some core values from Brene Brown if you need a little help to identify some of those for yourself. And now I want you to jot down, what are the stories you have around creativity for yourself and how it shows up in your life? These may have shown up a little bit in some of those memories that you had with your creativity as you were um, in that guided meditation. I'm going to give you about 1 more minute here. Okay. As you look at this, I call these a 3-column compass because it gives you direction in whatever the areas you're looking at. As you look at this and think back on um, that guided practice we did, what things stand out? What do you notice? Is there anything that surprised you, or just general observations?
You know what surprised me is I didn't go back to a memory of actually making art. It was a memory of me planting. Anytime I would eat any fruit and I had to have seeds, I would go plant all of the seeds in the backyard because I was like, I wanted all the apple trees to grow and watermelons. And that's the memory I went back to. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. But the answers were really interesting, like to see, just to see what happens and to watch things grow. And, you know, it was, but it is related to art and creativity.
I mean, you're trying to
Yeah.
create something right there. I mean,
Yeah. I loved it. I was surprised by that.
um, and that, like, that curiosity being so strong in that. Yeah, I love that. Anybody else? Matt?
Actually surprised by how vivid a memory came up for me. Um, right away, I started picturing myself like maybe around 4 years old. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my mom, and she would give me the cardstock that came inside like pantyhose packages.
I remember that.
I would like draw on them, or I remember sitting with my yellow handled scissors and cutting things out and gluing them down. It's funny that that's the memory I have because before I came all my stuff together, I wasn't sure if we were going to make anything today. So I got out a pair of scissors and I've got some stuff here to cut up to do some collage work, which is not something I normally do. So it's just kind of interesting how all those things kind of came together.
I love that. And I so remember those little, it was like a little, not cardboard, but like cardstock, exactly like you're saying. And it was all, I mean, it's like, oh, this is perfect. Yeah, that's so fun. Thank you for sharing that. How about you, Christine?
Hi, thank you. I wasn't surprised. It was more like confirmation for me,
Yep.
how important cre being, creativity is to my well-being and to me thriving. And
Yep.
when I went out, like looked at all the pictures, and they were kind of like flashes, and the times in my life where it was kind of outside forces trying to suppress it, like creativity wasn't a very doing very well. So it really is like so important, and it's consistently tries to keep emerging in my life, even during those times when it wasn't as well supported as you know as I would have liked, but I keep trying to show up, in different ways. So it was, there was some consistency there. And all my joy, my freedom, my are all connected to that. It's just so important to me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Surprises, observations, confirmations. I think we have a chat from Britt. Yeah, definitely a difference between child me and adult me, answering why I create. And interesting that my memory went to my grandparents. At home, I had to take care of my mom and sister. At my grandparents' house, when they babysat me, my job was to play alone. And so my imagination was able to play a lot more at their house. Yep. Yep. Sarah, thank you.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, well, thank you for putting up those Brene Brown adjectives. So one thing that absolutely threw me in a good way is the word forgiveness that came up, and I would categorize a lot of my writing as spiritual, but never forgiveness. And as I think even to very, very recent poems that I've written, that is true. That is probably how I have processed forgiveness. And that was a big surprise.
Thank you for sharing that.
I had never thought about that before too, but if I think about my writing as a child, and a lot of it was about sort of like the shame I felt, or things like that, and I can see it was about forgiving myself. So I wouldn't have thought about it without that perspective. So thanks for that, Sarah.
Anastasia says, for me, creativity is knowledgeable and it's a cornerstone of science. Ooh, and creativity is based in reason. It serves purpose. The results may be abstract, but it's founded by logic or a creed. That's how it is in my life. It is my intellectualism. Thank you. Anyone else want to share something? Matt.
Yeah, I realize that compassion is a gigantic component of creativity, not necessarily in the sense of compassionate mind training, but more in the sense that our imagination can be very destructive at times. And so when we're really doing something with intent and creative and have that safeness about us, then our intent can follow that, and really good things can manifest from that.
Yeah, when we can feel safe to create, things flow a lot more there. And when we can, like creativity can be part of safeness, I think, for us. And it can also like lead to more safeness if we allow it, or if we can access that. So it's kind of like almost like a flow of compassion happening a little bit there. Yep. Jenny.
I had a creative experience several years ago that kind of hit me between the eyes, and it lasted for 4 years. I had something that just popped up, and it was compelling me to draw. And it came in not only visions, but words and phrases. So I was writing everything down on little pieces of paper here and there. And I drew every day for 4 years in a totally different style than I've worked in before, completely different. It was something like a cross between African American, Egyptian, Hispanic style art. I couldn't even put my finger on it. My friends were all amazed. They said, it doesn't look like your work. at the end of 4 years, I had 162 pieces of artwork. Most of them were colored. And I got 2 shows out of it, exhibits. But I have no idea where this came from. It slowed down. Once in a while, I still get little messages, but for 4 years, it was intense. I couldn't ignore it. And so I think when creativity shows its head, it's our responsibility as artists to take time to notice and respond to it. Or I wouldn't have had this amazing experience.
Thank you for sharing that. What did anyone notice anything, any connections or anything that surprised them when they saw their why, their values, and their stories kind of together on that one sheet of paper?
I think I saw the courage, and I'm glad you put the Brene Brown notes up there too. So when I saw the courage word, I teach middle school art, and that's just such a tumultuous time in general in life. And I always feel self-conscious showing my work to my middle school students, just not being confident drawing in general. Kind of a jack of all trades person. I love doing art, but I'm not always confident drawing in front of an audience. So I think that helps me relate to my students a little more when they're coming in feeling really apprehensive about creating their own art. So I'm hoping that helps to create a little bridge. And I'm honest with them about that too. And I think they appreciate that at times. So the courage is a big one.
It's so courageous to create, and whether or not you share it at all, but I mean, like to be vulnerable enough to be able to express what you're feeling onto something. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, that Brene Brown list is really good. Cindy shared it in her Art Connection circle that I was in, and I was like, we have to put that up again, because that was a really good one. It has a lot of good words on it.
Yeah.
Anybody else before we move on? All right. Well, after looking at, and I know that that was a pretty fast activity. I don't expect that this is going to be the end of that kind of exercise for you. I would love for you to go back and explore that a little bit more. After tonight, the reason that I have you do it right now and don't give you quite enough time is that so that you will actually be able to have at least a start on that, and then you can go back and fill that out a little bit more. But now I'm going to hand things over to Cindy, and we're going to see some creativity in process.
Okay, so y'all know that I love to look at and interpret and talk about art. And I am so excited to share the artwork today with you. It's a first for me because we are actually going to look at a work of dance as our artwork we're going to interpret. So I'm going to show the video for you. We've tested it out. Hopefully you'll hear the sound and see the video okay. And then after we watch the video, I'm going to give you a few minutes to reflect and kind of take some notes about what came up for you during the video, and then we're going to talk about it. But one of the things I want you to look at is in this video, there is one of the dancers, the male dancer is a hummingbird, and the female dancer is a flower. And so it's kind of about their relationship. And if you're a So You Think You Can Dance fan, you might know this one. It's iconic. But what I want you to think about this through is you are the hummingbird, the male dancer, his name is Hawk, and then the flower, Jamie, is your creativity. And so as you watch this dance, look at the relationship between the two. Notice any like body sensations you have, any emotions, any thoughts that come through your mind. You can take notes if you want to, but I'll give you a second. I'll give you a little bit of time afterwards to jot your notes down before we before we discuss. Okay. And it's a beautiful dance. I've watched it like 6 times in a row today because I was preparing for this, and it is good every time. Okay, let me get it going. One sec.
And when we were talking about what to put up here, this we both were just like, oh my gosh, this is so great. We both were really excited to share it with you.
Yeah, we both got like full body chills when we when we figured out this was the artwork. Okay, let's see. Click that. And then I need to make sure my share computer sound is on. Okay, this should work. If y'all can give me just a thumbs up when it starts playing, if you can hear it. Oh, I love it so much. Okay. Every time.
Oh,
Every time.
oh my God.
Okay, I'm going to give you just a minute or two to write down some of your thoughts and interpretations about how this represents creativity for you. And then after those, about 2 minutes, we'll come together and discuss your thoughts. Okay. Now that you've had a moment to compose yourself after that amazing work of art, I would love to hear your thoughts on how you think this dance represented creativity and self. Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
First of all, it's so crazy. I was just watching a video by Fiction. If you're so you can
yeah.
write a solo right before this. That's crazy. I wrote that there was this moment when they were finally intertwined and it was so beautiful, but that was only part of the dance, and that we cannot be completely engaged in our creativity all the time. There are going to be times where we sit down and we write crap. It's not always going to be that moment of receiving pollen that if that makes sense. You'll never get to the point of your ultimate or your most creative if you never seek the flower. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
That.
You have to at least look for the flower.
Yes.
To show up for your class.
Yeah, and a lot of people wait for this big moment of inspiration to hit before they make art or they write. They just kind of wait. But that's really not how it works. You have to be kind of looking for it and engaging with it. I love when Hawk, he's making these like movements in his head and like looking over there, like he's curious, but he's like, oh, I don't know. But he's always kind of watching and looking at that flower. Let's see. And Kathy in the comments says the push and pull of creating, taking, making, finding time, uninterrupted. That would be amazing. Uninterrupted time to make art. The joy of completing a project. Yeah, I can see all of that represented in this dance. What else did you notice? Yes, Shalise, if I'm saying your name right.
Yes. So I wrote, it seemed like the hummingbird was intrigued by the flower, but seemed uncertain about its safety or if it was safe to approach and to approach the flower. But after investigating it and interacting with the flower, the hummingbird realizes that the flower was something that had always needed. The one thing that had been missing from his life. Creativity is a necessity. Like air that we breathe.
Love it. You gave me chills. I love when someone gives me chills. Yeah, I love that. And that moment of safety, I think, is really important. It's really one of the things that we wanted to focus our discussion on today, because if you don't feel safe enough to create, then you won't do it. And he's in the dance, toying with this idea of like, am I safe here? And then, their reactions, finally there comes to a point where they're both dancing together at this exact same dance. And he's like, okay, yeah, I've got this. I'm safe here with this flower. And I love that. Thank you for noticing that. Great observation. What else did you notice?
I noticed a lot of my own body sensations happening during that. And, a lot of what other people have been saying too, but like, heartbeat elevated. I was feeling that as I was watching that, kind of putting myself in that position or, in that space. Kind of like a warmth in my like solar plexus area. Strange. It seemed strange to me at the time, but like I felt like my mouth was watering. And I had some tingling down my neck, arms, and hands, and I noticed that I was just smiling and I couldn't not smile at parts, not the whole time, but there were parts where I was noticing a lot of physical sensations that I didn't anticipate I would have, because I've seen it a few times. So, but I did. So that was interesting to me. because it felt similar to, you know, when you are that tentative feeling of creating, also the excitement, also the when it's not feeling good, and like it felt like a lot of those sensations that I have when I'm creating on a daily basis showed up even watching that. So yeah, thank you.
Love that. And Britt in the comments says, when they split and come together, separate then join, reminds me of the process of emptying and filling your cup, evolving and changing as you explore. The tempo changes as well, more languid or fluid, slower movements than faster. Yes. And it's kind of like what Shalisa said, is like, you can't always be, or maybe Sarah that said that, you can't always be fully engaged in your creativity. But it's like, and you can't always be like perfectly inspired. Like I have these moments where I'll wake up in the middle of the night, it's 4 a.m. and I just start writing, and I'm like, it's coming from somewhere and I'm just writing it down. I'm just channeling it. And I live for those moments, but those moments are few and far between. And I can't always be that. There has to be more to it. Patricia says, looking with curiosity, but embracing the challenge with courage and grace, looking for different points of view. I love that. Yeah, he was always kind of looking from different angles. Oh, he popped off my screen. Where did it go? Okay. Points of view, ways, eyes to approach it, to become one. I felt the urge to move, to breathe deeply, like to catch my breath for the next step, being in the process. Oh, I love that.
For me, I can relate to everything everybody said. I truly can. So to add something new, I don't know if I can, but I sometimes when I relate to this in a way, is I have to give myself permission sometimes to be vulnerable and to take creative risks. It's within my safety zone, but at the same time, if I allow myself to have that courage and that vulnerability and to just embrace whatever it is that's presenting itself, I can almost like fall in love with it, even if it doesn't have to be even beautiful, like technically, like or very skillful, but it's just in the process of letting it happen. And I don't know if that makes any sense.
It totally does. And there's a moment in the dance that I think is exact. And I took some screenshots. I didn't know if I was going to use them or not because I just wasn't sure. But I'm going to show you 2 screenshots because it reminded me of what you said. It's when this is when like he was like on top of her and he came together. This like the first time they really truly came together. And then like right after that moment, let's see if it does it right. This happens. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, that's like this moment of like risk or like of you're feeling safe, but now you can like put your, I don't know, just like all the body positions right there. I'm just like, oh, anyway, made me think of what you just said. But you have to have that safety to be able to have the courage to take those risks.
It's like a paradox.
Yes.
It's like it doesn't seem to make sense, but it's true.
Well, and we always hear this idea that you have to grow, you have to get out of your comfort zone. And Heather and I have talked about this over and over again. They're like, well, if you need to feel safe, if you're going to grow, you need to feel nurtured, and you still can take risks and you still can be brave, but you have to start from a place of safety or you're not going to be able to do it. Beautiful. Any other observations about this dance?
Jenny had a comment here in the chat. The creative piece ebbs and flows and is constantly changing, requiring us to open to the realization of the changes.
Yes. There's some days, Heather and I just started a podcast recently. I don't know if you've heard it. We've had 2 episodes come out. Our 3rd one's coming out tomorrow. But we were talking about the fact, some days being creative is reading. Some days it's like taking a walk. Someday, it's not always just writing or drawing, or it's the creative process is much larger than just the act of creating. There's more happening there. Yeah, like Kathy says in the chat, you don't have to get to a finished piece. It's about that place of curiosity. I never saw one of those apple seeds grow into a tree. Well, we changed to a house, and then we moved houses. So who knows? Maybe there's a house in Amarillo, Texas, with like 100 apple trees in it and watermelons growing everywhere. But it didn't matter. Any other thoughts or observations about this artwork? Okay, I always like to ask, after we are done with a discussion on an artwork, I feel like we could keep going, but and Patricia here says the creative process is very personal and unique. I love that too. Yeah, it's your own journey. It's going to look different for everybody. And that is what I like to ask when at the end of a discussion about an artwork is, what are you going to take with you from this discussion, from this beautiful dance that we looked at, that you want to remember, that you want to maybe act on, something that you want to do differently in your life, a way we want to engage in your creativity. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to write your thoughts. And while you do, we might as well put the dance on just one more time while you do your thinking. Okay. Okay, I couldn't, they were still clapping in my ears and I couldn't figure out how to get it to stop. All right. Any thoughts on inspiration for your life? What you might do differently in your life? What inspiration you're going to take from this? Anyone want to share?
What for me, earlier when we were doing the meditation at the beginning, was the contrast between like, you know, my childhood self of just like really just loving the process. And then as an adult, sort of feeling like, oh, I have to have a reason to be doing this. Like I'm making for somebody, it has to have a purpose. So I think maybe what I'll take away from interpreting that dance is like maybe just allow myself to really figure out what it is I'm drawn to. Like in the video, it's so clear that he's drawn to that flower, you know, or that creativity. So rather than sort of listening to whatever these stories I've made up for myself, really think about what's drawing me.
Love that. Thank you, Beth. And then Jennifer in the chat said that she will give herself grace when the idea doesn't come. You can never know when the idea will come, and staying engaged, it will. Kathy is talking about her experience working with Alzheimer's patients. It's about the process, being together, sharing stories and laughter. The art created is a joyful byproduct of our time together in community. So much of this is not about the end result. The end results are amazing. Like, you know, we got an end result here that we got to really appreciate. But the process is what really engages most of us in. If you think about that childhood self, they weren't creating to make a masterpiece. They were creating to see what would happen, to be curious, you know, any other reason. And I imagine that the choreographer of this is Wade Robson. And, you know, I imagine that he had his starting process was just being curious about a hummingbird and being curious about a flower and what movements does the hummingbird make. And that curiosity is what blossomed into this beautiful work of art. Any other shares that have inspiration from this dance?
Christina, were you unmuted there for a second?
Me?
Yeah.
I probably was. And then like somebody said something real, I really like just and it's I'm looking at just my overall what I came up with, and all of so much of it when I'm staying just with what feels good for me, you know, as I said, that's just when I'm thriving. All of it, you know, the times I might not be prolifically being creative, you know, just the whole process of it, the journey and the destination. And there was only one critical sentence that I had on my paper. So my thing is like, there's so much joy here. And then there's this one thought when I wrote about the stories. So I'm just going to watch what's, you know, what the stories are. They my stories? Are they coming from somebody else or society, or just like, just to be mindful of like, you know, stay in the joy, watch those negative stories.
Yes. And in the chat, Jenny talks about her 4-year process of creation of The Keeper did not always feel comfortable. And that's a really important point. It doesn't always feel comfortable. And that's what Heather's going to talk to us about next. So that's a good transition point. But finally stopped questioning, gave into the process, and then it felt safe. And then I love what Britt said is, I am a dancing flower who must also be nurtured, watered, sunshine, fertilized, rest, shared with others, and self-expressed. That's super important too. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Heather, who this is a great transition point of all of this talk about how feeling safety and this comfort zone. She's going to talk to us more about that.
So at the beginning, when I introduced myself, I said, I want to bring compassion to the world, but also to help people who are creating be compassionate with themselves in that creative process, because creating is extremely vulnerable and it requires you to dig to a level that you could not do if you, you don't have to do that. You can, but it is a requirement if you're going to create. And that can bring up lots of fear. It can bring up uncomfortable feelings. It can bring up a lot of things that we don't necessarily want to experience. And yet we venture into creativity because it has so much value to us. But when I say the word compassion, I'm using a definition from Dr. Paul Gilbert, who is the founder of Compassion Focused Therapy and Compassionate Mind Training. And that definition is compassion is the willingness to see the pain and suffering in yourself and others, and then the motivation to do something to help alleviate or prevent that pain and suffering. So when we are creating, if there is a way that we can bring on some of that internal safeness, help us to access some of that internal safeness while we're creating, it doesn't eliminate those critical thoughts or those fears, but it helps us to handle them. It helps us to navigate them. And we have, I've done a lot of training with Compassionate Mind Training, and they talk about, I'm not going to go into the depths of that because that would take a really long time. I'm going to stay real high level right now, but they talk about 3 different emotional regulation systems: threat, drive, and soothe. This is called the 3-circle model: threat, drive, and soothe. And when they're all in balance, then things feel pretty good. We need all of these systems in order to survive. It's not like we can push that threat system out completely because that keeps us safe. We need that drive system, and we need the soothe system. So I want you to think about for a second, what brings on your threat system? What ignites your drive system? And then also, what helps you to cultivate soothing or calm? And so that threat system, that's like the fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Drive is this, creative, imaginative. It has a lot of like action oriented. And then the soothe is just that rest and digest. So just take a couple minutes to jot down things that you notice. And these don't have to be related to creativity. They can just be things you notice that show up. And sometimes things can move from the drive system to they can become threat based occasionally. And sometimes things in your drive system can be soothing. I'll give you like 1 more minute here. Okay, so as I work with clients, what I notice is that these 3 emotional regulation systems, threat, drive, and soothe, are not, they don't show up as these separate things in most people's lives. So I'm about to show a slide that is not the compassionate mind way of looking at this. I mean, the compassionate mind training, this is not approved, but this is how I see it. So this is how I'm explaining it to you. So when we are creating, when Cindy and I talk about being in your comfort zone, I look at that as your creation zone. And that does not mean it exists without threat or without drive. And that it's only soothe. That is not the case. I think your comfort zone is the place where you can experience a little bit of threat and also have the drive and be supported with your soothing system, which is that parasympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic nervous system is igniting threat and drive, and your parasympathetic nervous system is the soothing. But you can move sort of between those or among those, and in that comfort zone is the place where you can handle or navigate. You have enough soothing. And the thing that brings on, one of the things that bring on the soothing system is compassionate practices. One of the most common and easily accessible practices is the practice that I did with you at the beginning of this session, which is soothing rhythm breathing. So even something like that can bring enough soothing and to enable a little bit of exploration, a little bit extra into your drive. So I want to pause here and let's talk about what you saw when you put your threat, drive, and soothe things in there, because when you're creating, if you can bring on some of those things that you know create, like help to bring your soothing system in, you can do those in conjunction or near to where you are, like the time that you are creating. So what did you guys, what are some of the things that you noticed when you jotted down the things that are ignited in your threat, drive, and soothe? And how that might interplay when we look at that kind of like Venn diagram almost of how they all could exist, or some of them obviously, some of those big threats, they're not going to exist in your time, in your creative time. But if you can bring on enough soothing to handle some of those other things, you can look at that a little bit more clearly.
I think Jennifer in the comments has a beautiful example of how they all 3 work together. She sells her work at art shows, and the threat of the looming deadline creates the drive to get in the studio, but then the process of making is what soothes her. So they're all 3 working together.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that, Beth.
That one was Jennifer.
Oh, Jennifer, sorry. And then Beth also said, I like how you pointed out that something can move from one system to another. When I become overwhelmed by some of the ideas that come into my mind, I feel threat, trying to figure out how to address them and make them work together. If I can step back and take some deep breaths, do some yoga, go for a walk, I can regulate enough to bring my ideas together. Exactly. Yes. Anyone else have things they noticed, surprised by, unexpected, or just observed? Looks like we've got another comment here from Britt. This was the difference between the inner child and the adult answering the question of why create. The adult said, one reason is because we have spent so long masking neurodivergent safety coping mechanism and fawning, fight, flight, fawn, freeze, that we've become separated, disconnected from ourselves. Expression helps us find the self who has faded into societal expectations, help the traumatized adult connect with the naive child. So perhaps taking trauma and mapping into safety will help me. That's beautiful, Britt. Thank you for sharing that. And Stephanie said, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, stress, I get that aggression out and finish, and the finish and creating the work soothes. Thank you. And Patricia says, interesting, my list in threats was longer than the other ones, so I had to go back and compensate for the others. Yeah, the threats are easier to see. They're really easy to see. So they're going to pop out real fast. Sometimes we have to, and this could be an experiment too, noticing in your day things that you've like, oh, I love sitting, watching the birds, or I love the 5 minutes I have with my coffee in the morning, or whatever that might be, meditation, a conversation with someone you care about, whatever those things happen to be, just noticing like, oh, what do I feel in my body? I feel relaxed. I feel safe. I feel all of those things. This is something that brings on my soothing system. Anybody else before we move on? Christine says, for me, threats are the voices of duty, distraction, that those must come first before creating. Right. Yep. Those are.
Go ahead.
I just was responding to Christine that those are loud voices. Yep. And so even finding a small little, foothold space that you can nurture some of the creativity, even if it isn't up to the expectation of, I want to do this for an hour a day. But finding those small times to help bring creativity back as a nurtured practice. Thanks for sharing that, Christine. Sarah, what were you going to say?
Spending time with animals. I'm sure that is true for a lot of us, and if I can't spend time with an animal, watching animals via video or watching nature documentaries, but spending time with my kitty.
Yeah, animals can really be that perfect nurturer that I talked about at the beginning. I mean, that I shared in the beginning meditation. That perfect nurturer is part of compassionate practice. And they are definitely among, my dog is definitely one of my perfect nurturers for sure. And Kathy says, sometimes just writing down the monkey chatter is releasing it so it simmers down. Yep. And Jenny says, art heals. I love this diagram. It clears up some questions I had about the process. While thinking about this, all three systems can individually be felt during creativity. Creativity changes the variables though. Yep. Yes. Thank you so much. Anybody else before we head to our, oh yes, Shalise.
For threat, fear and doubt, and questioning my abilities, the whole imposter syndrome.
Yep.
But then the drive is my need to create. And so for soothing, when I reflect on previous creative triumphs, it reassures me that I can move forward.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. We can all relate with that, to that. I mean, that imposter syndrome piece, everyone's experienced that at some time or another. Okay. Cindy, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
All right.
And Bruno.
He likes to join at least one part of every meeting.
Yep.
But I'm going to kick him off for this part because I can't focus. Okay. He's too soothing. So one of the things that I wrote about in my book, Art is About Being Whole, a memoir, is that I, for probably a good 20 years of my life, stopped making art. As a child, I was constantly drawing, making art. I wanted to be a Disney animator, and I studied all the Disney, and I wrote journals and journals and journals and poems, and then I was constantly doing something creative. And then at some point I stopped because a college professor said I wasn't good enough. I stopped because academics became a stronger, I chose Latin over theater so I could learn root words to do better on my SATs. There was this pull of, that's not serious. You need to be more serious. You need to do, you need to focus on what makes money and all of the things. And so for a long time in my life, even though I was an art teacher, I was not making art for myself. I wasn't writing anymore. And then I started my business, and still, I felt my creativity kind of slowly seeping away. And there became a moment where I was kind of really burnt out from years of running my business. And I had this moment of, what do I need to do next? And the answer was so loud and clear in my head. And it was like, your art, it was an undeniable voice. It's like, you have to make art. And so that was in December, I think 23rd, 2021, as when I dedicated myself to re-engaging with what I had left behind for so long. And Heather and I have talked about this, that we both have had these experiences of times where our creativity feels like it left us, but we left it, and it didn't go anywhere. We left it for a while, but we always had this pull towards it, and we always had this call towards it. And we've met so many people through our careers who are experiencing the same thing, that they're wanting to make art, but they don't, or they wanting to write, but they're not. And it's just this thing in the back of their head that's just there, and it's always there, but it's whether how aware of it are you, because you have to make money and you have to do all the things. And so we were, talking together about, well, how can we help people do this? How do we help people re-engage with their creativity in a safe way? And it's more than just here's 40 drawing prompts, so the next 40 days you're going to draw and then you're going to be creative again. It's so much deeper than that. There's so many layers. All those stories that we tell ourselves that keep us from our creativity are really very deep, like what Britt had said in the comments about, that years of masking or, hiding who you truly are, and hiding that aspect of you. And so all these conversations that Heather and I have come to a beautiful place, and we've created a course. And you've just experienced lesson 1 of the course, basically. And it's called Spacious Creative, Compassionate Process and Practice. I can never get the 2 P words right. And it's a 6-week course that basically takes you through this exploration of your own creativity, helping you engage with it in a safe way, and doing it in a community of other people who are exploring their creativity together. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the program, but what it will be is basically like me and I run a program called Art Connection Circle, and Heather runs a program called Compassionate Writer. And this is kind of like the two got married and made a beautiful new program. So in all of our explorations in this course, we will be looking at art together and talking about it like we did with the dance. We'll be reading poems, looking at artwork, clips from books or theater, different things. We're going to use art to help us explore these concepts. And these concepts, I'm going to skip to them. I meant to do that. It's a 6-week program. Every week we meet for an hour and a half at this exact time, Wednesdays at 6 o'clock Eastern time. And we're going to continue talking about safeness, because I think that's going to be a theme that goes across the whole thing. We're going to talk about curiosity and observation, play, expression, and embracing yourself and your voice, and then self-expression. And while we explore each of those things, there's work that you do in between. We'll give you compassionate practices and activities to do. And then the sessions themselves will be very interactive, like the one was today. So if this was something that you feel like you got a lot out of, and you feel inspired to really engage into your creativity in a new way, in a way that really is nurturing and compassionate, we would love to invite you to our program called Spacious Creative. And the program, this is the detail. So it's 6 live Zoom sessions. Technically it's 40 days, because we liked the theme 40. Heather has a book called 40 Weeks, so we're keeping with that. And then we'll have about 90 to 120 minute, or hour and a half to 2 hour sessions every week. And then you have creative practices and support between your sessions. And then you will get the opportunity to create in multiple modalities. Because I found when I was writing my book, if I would get stuck writing, if I would go make art, something would get unstuck. Or if I was having trouble with art, if I did a little bit of writing, I would get unstuck. So
Creativity begets creativity.
yes, more creativity, the more creativity. So it's going to be a beautiful program. We are so excited about it. I had the idea. It was one of my middle of the night ideas, and I didn't text Heather in the middle of the night because we weren't there yet. Now I can. I have permission, but it was a middle of the night idea, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have to do this, our 2 programs together. So it's called Spacious Creative, and you can go to thespaciouscreative.com for all of the details, and I'll put the link in the chat too. And if you register for the course before the end of the month, you get $100 off. Sorry, I'm typing thespaciouscreative.com at the same time, making sure I spelled it right. Yes. And it starts in September 4th. So we're here to answer any questions that you have if you want to talk about any of this. But otherwise, that's basically the end. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your experiences with the art and your experience with creativity. It was a pleasure.
It was so great. And I know sometimes I don't think of questions right away. So if you have questions later, we are going to do a Q&A in August that you can come and ask all the questions too. So I know sometimes I need a little bit of space to think about things. And so we'll be answering questions in August.
And feel free to email, DM, Facebook. Happy to talk. Yeah, thank you so much.
It's great seeing everybody here.
Bruno wants to say goodbye one more time. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, you guys. Bye.